What I'd like to ask, Mike, is you and I have talked a bit, and I'd like you to share with the broader audience. Most of us are on the conventional side of things. So you've got a small organization that is flat. We've talked about that, the agility that that provides. I'd like, if you could, you've watched from the outside as well on how our conventional and regular Army has been trying to adapt to human performance, some great initiatives like Mission Ready and the other pieces we have. What could you advise us here, and you know, me later over a beer perhaps, but advise us on how we can adapt some of the things that you've seen into that bigger, slower, more cumbersome machine that we call the regular Army, and how we can move ourselves forward in that dimension?
Yeah, okay, Simon, thanks for that. It's, you know, so I get asked this question a fair bit, and I'm always very careful to sort of frame my answer, because of course my job is never to speak for or render assessments on the Canadian Army. I mean, as Simon and I know, we served in the Army for a long time, and my relationship with General Winnick is super positive. And you know, the Canadian Army is a great little thing, and you know, just like CANSOF's a great little thing, it's our little thing. But I would say that well, I guess I would start by saying we have to be careful not to fall into a trap where people see Canada's Special Forces as some kind of airsats post 9/11 Army. It is not an airsats Canadian Army since 9/11. We never bring the combined arms maneuver, the firepower that the Army does. You know, my guys go to fight, they wear 10 magazines of 5.56 ammunition, and they have a great radio to talk to airplanes. Maybe a light anti-armor weapon, some 60mm mortars. And so I think we have to be careful not to conflate CANSOF and the Army. But you know, Simon, what works for us, and by dint of our small size, and we are so flat. Like the CDS calls me and says, Mike, I want you to do this. I make the next call to a CO, Task Force Commander. Like there's no other organization in CAF that has a 2-star leading it that is literally one level up from where the troops are. It is exceptionally unique. But for me, a lot of it is about culture. You know, everything in life is a decision. And just the way we've grown up, we have made decisions to not just talk about empowering people, but to actually empower people. And we push trust down. Our culture is biased to action. When in doubt, don't just develop the situation, get off the X, do something. There's nothing that you can do that's going to be so wrong that we can't fix it later, but do it. You know, now, of course, that comes with the notion of accountability. Like we don't shy away from accountability. But as an organization, we have a tolerance for honest failure. You can't ask people to be proactive and do stuff if you're not going to absorb some failures, but failures of omission, not commission. And so it's this virtuous cycle in our culture of kind of walking the walk, I think, pushing power to the edge. You know, meaning is the new money in people's lives. Right? I mean, they want money, you know, they need a good enough pay structure and all that, but meaning is the new money. And when people feel self-actualized, you know, in the organization that they work in, I think they're more productive. And I've always said that a leader's job is to create a climate and a culture. That's really what we do as leaders. And then you demand that of your subordinate commanders, and it creates this virtual cycle. So the Army can never become as flat as we are. Every relay doubles the noise and cuts the message in half. The Army will never be able to achieve what we achieve that way. But I think the Army could do, I think, different things in terms of still trying to cut some of those relays out, which would accelerate the feedback loops, delegating maybe more authorities lower to make decisions, even if you know you're going to have to iterate. My commander of my school, Lieutenant Colonel, is your equivalent of Commander CAD-TC, CTC, in the infantry school in terms of his authorities. And I am the service commander in terms of the soft training authority. So, you know, those sorts of examples of staff are important, but it's all about commanders, right? And just make it happen. Power to the edge, context, not control. We need commitment, not compliance. You know, that sort of thing. That's what I would offer, Simon. I mean, it's a super long-winded, you know, mushy answer to say it's a lot about culture, but people matter, process matters, and structure matters. At Armed Forces Council yesterday, someone asked me, after we briefed on our innovation agenda, which we're working hard on, a question. I said, you know, a headquarters can be good until it gets to X. And at X plus 1 and X plus whatever after that, it starts to become worse, not better. And we pay attention to that. My headquarters in Ottawa is super small. It's about 125 regular and reserve force people. And we do the 5 Fs, right? From generation, development, all the way to employment, sustainment, management. Yeah, so I think there's a real value in being small and lean. But it's not for the faint of heart. You know, there's a lot of people who get into an environment like that and they just hate it. It moves too fast for them. It makes them uncomfortable. That's why we select our people. Anyway, I'll stop with this, but in my experience in CANSOF, especially as an operator, it's a binary culture. You're a 0 or a 1. You know, we're looking for 1s. And sometimes a 0 gets through the membrane, and as soon as we identify it, you've got to leave, because you just can't work in that environment. It's not a ruthless culture, but it's a very rigorous culture, and there's a difference between the two things. Yes, sir.
General, thank you very much. Excellent presentation. Steve Taylor, work with Callion Group Limited, and currently in Formation Training Group up on the Garrison. In fact, 2 of the projects we're working on link very closely to what you've said, and I was pleased to see the Army Systems approach to training cycle and the rapid lessons learned loop at the end of that analysis phase, and I've taken a point away from that, which I'll be injecting into a project that I'm working on behalf of Formation Training Group.
And send me my check for...
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll send you the Callion fee as well.
That's right.
So that's very useful. And I think your last question, you answered some of the questions I had with regards to how to exploit those observations from operations and lessons from training as well. So that's very useful, especially as we develop a Canadian Army exercise planning and execution course. So I may well be tapping into some of your staff for that one, sir.
Well, let me just say, though, you'll have a hard time tapping into a lot of my staff.
No.
Because I have long said, since I've been the commander, the day we get to in CANSOF, a managed readiness program that briefs on a slide will have failed.
Yeah.
And so what we do is I give the essential governance, and then we leave a big, open, vacuous space, and that's where my task force commanders move in and train their task forces to give them room to be creative.
Yeah. And I link back to my UK experience of where there was training exploitation and symposia for the conventional forces. I know the SF do it as well, cross briefs and the like,
Yep.
to get that rapid passing of observations from ops and the like. My question actually is with regard to recruiting and your HP R&D team. Have they looked further back as you're looking for 20 to 30 year operators with regards to pre-selection, coming out to the Canadian Army as a Canadian Army Reserve commanding officer to us, how you could actually identify those that should be going for selection? We see the posters up in the gym and the like, but what's happening prior to that?
Yeah,
Thanks,
so no, thanks for the question. We've identified maybe about a year and a half ago that we're very analog in how we're trying to connect with the new generation, how we're trying to recruit them. We need to be digital. Like I say that metaphorically, but also literally. Posters, briefings at a base, like that's so 1990. So we're making inroads in the social media penetration space. We're trying to attack the messaging thing head on and get with the program of how people communicate now. So that's one step. We're looking hard at our recruiting, and we're challenging ourselves on the sort of basic setup that we've enjoyed for the last 25 years of recruiting from the regular force, the reserve force. We're looking at source recruiting, going on to this Civvy Street. We're looking at that. No, I'm not saying we're doing it. We're looking at it, and we're trying to understand what the implications of that would be. Someone goes to a recruiting center and says, I want to be a SOF operator. It happens a lot, but there's no structure, there's no mechanism for that guy or girl. We're looking at what it would take to put a mechanism in place where maybe they do sign the dotted line and then go to an infantry battalion for a year or two, and then their file is automatically BF'd to selection, something like that. We're looking at what it would take to recruit someone from the street and actually do the basic qualification training ourselves. and then put them into our pipeline. So we're looking at all these things, Steve. I'm a reluctant commander on some of those fronts. You know, like I said, back to culture, I believe it's very difficult to be a special forces person if you haven't been a conventional military person. There can become an attitude of entitlement, this elitist kind of mindset. We want nothing to do with that. And we respect where we came from, Army, Navy, Air Force, whatever. Great respect for where we came from. I worry about what it would do to bring someone in and just make them an SF person right from day one. But you know, our allies have done it. The 18 X-ray program in the US and such, with some success. And so we're looking at these things. I think the bottom line, Steve, is we have to keep challenging ourselves to think outside the box and go after a very, you know, there's a diverse demographic out there that we still haven't tapped into enough. If you read the policy document that came out, we're looking at how to better leverage major metropolitan centers in this country, CANSOF, for things like, you know, the linguistic program and some of the sort of more exquisite capabilities as it relates to IMIT. So we have a lot more work to do in that sense.